this work doesn't come easily. It's hard fought. There's no silver bullets. We have to do the homework and the research and come to points of view and then be able to communicate that back to the teams to then comment on.
You've got the overall kind of narrative that we're trying to get across, but I think it's helping teams break it down to kind of the emotional highs and the lows and bringing it back to the audience and about actually what do we want them to feel in this moment.
The only way any sort of creative going to do that is going away and immersing themselves in that, whatever that character or topic is. So you need to go step back into that world, take a good look underneath the bonnet and see what it's about, find out the history.
So what brings us together? That's a very good question. I think we did ask ChatGPT, but I think where we landed on it was really leadership and our role as leaders, directors with various fields. So I think Ryan, particularly in brand, Lisa, particularly in themed entertainment, and myself, well, let's just go with everything else.
Save everything.
Is how we drive teams, how we empower teams, what challenges we face. So it's quite a mighty topic, but I think I'd like to open it up really to Lisa, Ryan, whoever wants to jump in. If, look, as leaders, what are some of the challenges that we have faced, or whether that's kind of a case study you've got, or whether that's how you've mobilized teams, or whether that's from the client side. Anybody want to jump in and say, look, as creative leaders, this is something that we often face, and maybe not with the solution, but just framing the challenge?
Yeah, I think I'll kick that off, chime in, Lisa, obviously, but I think one of our biggest challenges, keeping creatives happy. Keeping them in the happy lane of what they're doing and what they love doing to, like I said, keep them happy, but also get the right results for the business and for, more importantly, for our brands that we're working with. So fundamentally, I think that's a big part of what we need to do and what we try to do here at 2Heads.
Yep.
Yeah, and I think, building on that, I think is creativity is a tough job because it's not a black and white answer.
No.
And we don't always know what we're trying to achieve at the end. And I think it's that balance of trying to kind of create enough vision for them to kind of steer the ship and guide, but also then creating the space so that they can bring the vision and that they can come up with the ideas and us then selecting it. And I think that's creativity isn't a linear process. We have to go back and forth, and it's creating a safe space for that to happen.
Yeah, we're giving everybody a stage to come and do whatever you want to do, right?
Yeah.
So it's that. It's not being must do this, must do that. Is let everybody flourish their thoughts and ideas and their skill sets.
Yeah,
under our direction.
So maybe just framing that, the challenge is really, obviously we've got many talented people, particularly within this agency, across very different roles and skill sets, and also with the dynamic of multiple clients, multiple timeframes, but also the hybrid kind of working that we have. And I think, as you said, Ryan, keeping them happy within that context, I'm on this brand, no, I'm not on this brand. What am I doing for this kind of creative piece? Who am I doing it with? When are they in? When are they out? Some of those are operational challenges, but really, empowering, making sure people know what they're trying to do, giving them clear direction on those things helps to sort of unite those teams. I think we'll probably revisit that, but I think it's really a top one in where it comes. I think I'll do one on the flip, which is probably one of the biggest challenges I think we all face, but naming it, is that the timescales we get, particularly for pitching work or bringing creative to the table, is shrinking. And there's definitely been a pattern of that shrinking quite significantly. The ASAP, the now, with all the pressures that are going on in the world, has amplified. And I think it's how we create time and space. And I think Ryan and Lisa, you were sort of mentioning that in the kind of methodology and the process we go through. That's a really important one, to get that kind of training program or that way that we move through creativity, because it's not linear. And those toolkits and those ideas of what we can bring is really important. So for me, I think timescales tightening is definitely a challenge we have. Keeping teams happy. Lisa, I'm going to throw you back under the bus. It seems like Ryan's got one. I've got one. You riffed off Ryan, so have you got one? What's the challenge you face?
You've mentioned about the time pressures of the pitches and that side of things. I think the other operational side of that is the shift and the change, because we have ongoing projects that are live, and we work on projects that have got sometimes a 3-week lifespan up to a 3-4 year lifespan, and keeping the resource consistent where we need it. Because I think most people in the creative industries, you work in this industry for passion. for a large part of it.
Yeah.
Like, of course, it's a commercial business and, everyone's doing it for those games. But I think the root cause of the personality that comes into this industry, that's what it is. So obviously, when we've got longer timelines, trying to keep the same people on the projects at the right time, I think is a challenge that we have. And we don't always have the foresight of when things are going to come in and when not. So that reactiveness that we have to be and how we can plug the gaps when we need to is definitely a challenge.
Well, I think that's great to hear, because at least we haven't come up with the idea. I think
Yeah.
we're very rich in being able to bring ideas and bring creativity to the table, and we haven't come with, the idea and framing it. So it seems like a lot of the challenges we face, and potentially that is the reason when you step into that leadership role, is it slightly takes you away from the creative tasks and doing the idea generation. It's much more operational, because we've got essentially here from one hand is molding teams, binding them together, giving them ownership, empowering them. You're talking about sort of resourcing, the ebb and flow of project life cycles, particularly across some which are, from roller coasters that go on for 4 years to others which are, we need it implemented in 2 weeks. And that's from concept to kind of, from my side of things here. What did I say? I can't remember what I said. Remind me. What was my part? The client timescales.
Well, in pitching,
Yeah,
in
exactly.
particular. Yeah.
So
In terms of for that one process element of it.
So we are also one of the biggest challenges. We are, say, chefs, for example, or a football manager, if I'm going to use that analogy, is whatever project you got, what's the right team? From our talent that we have in-house, or if we do use freelance, what is the right team to put forward to win this project is a big thing that we do, and we try and do best we can with the resource we have. And also, like I think you mentioned, the availability of some people at the right time. Picking the right talent at the right time to go and play that game, or bake the cake, as we've used quite a few times. The right recipe is the real challenge as well.
I think that's a really strong point, but I think you might have, because we speed date these things, jumped a little bit ahead, because when you say the right team, I think that's one of the things where we actually generate time for our teams, which is actually working out what the challenge is to be solved. And sometimes, through all the briefing documents, through all the scope of works, through the word of mouth of what we've heard and client meetings, it's not always obvious. And I think our position is to go, where are we going to get that best return on investment? Where are we actually spending our focus to go, this is what needs to be different, or why, or this is what we're creating? And it's that definition. And I think why I say you've gone ahead is I think you do that definition. I've definitely worked alongside with you, and you define it, and then we can work out which teams, which skill sets we want to power and bond together. So I think that is really valid, and it comes back to possibly the initial point I was making, which is how do we generate time? And I think if we don't define what that challenge is, and we don't sort of outlay that before we even put a creative, this is the direction, we don't know where we're starting from. And it's amazing to understand that with all the RFPs and that sometimes it's not clear. So I think, yes, definitely getting the right skills, definitely empowering people, but picking the starting point of where the brief lands is, and we call it the brief within the brief.
Well, it is. And I think is we need to make the time to do that. But then I think it's also, it's highlighting when that information isn't there and connecting with the client and pushing back to say, we need to know more, or like, we don't have enough information to even frame the problem. We've got a functional brief, and we can't build off that, and we can't necessarily really solve what the client's challenges are. So I think that's another one of our roles is actually that pushback and request to get more information so that we can build a better solution.
I think that possibly draws some line under 3 challenges we've got. I think moving another question on, and obviously this is pretty fluid. How often do you find you have to work outside of the creative teams to sort of define those challenges, or to work those challenges through in the agency that we are, which is, across 3 kind of position points on the globe, from LA to Montreal to here in the UK, just outskirts of London? Do you find that is working with production to define the destination, or actually if I pair this person with that, we're going to need the support of others? Or is it very much sort of isolated to actually creative are just the bubble and off we go? So I think that might be a leading question, but do we find those challenges are very much our department across multimedia, innovation, technology, strategy, etc.?
is cross department. I think that there's times when the creative team, we need to kind of, we've got the information, we've had the kickoff sessions, we've had those exploratory education questions with production.
Back off, leave us alone.
We've got to think, and you
Leave
kind
us
of need
alone,
to go
think.
into your huddle.
Yeah.
But I think at the beginning, that connection across department, getting production early doors. Like, we're having this idea of it, and getting some guides of restraints of, oh, well, wouldn't go near that area, but, oh, have you thought of this? The amount of times that just sparks a seed when you're then kind of in the creative ideation that just wouldn't have happened if you just go kind of in straight away. So it's definitely, across department and getting that diverse thinking, harnessing kind of all the different creative perspectives. And then I think our job when it then comes into like the creative leadership side is then helping to
navigate the team better.
What ideas are we going to blend together? What ideas work? What ideas don't? But first of all, keep it broad before we kind of bring it back in.
This move to hot topic, and I know it's been discussed a lot, but pulling teams together. Let's just talk about the physical. So let's talk about the landscape of where people sit. I know we've got great creatives in all over the world that are permanently employed by 2Heads, the agency. But hybrid model, does it work? Does it not work? Come on, lay it all bare. What do you think? How do you bring those teams together? What's your preference first? Let's get that out of the way. Let's get the biases on the table, and then maybe just talk us through an example where it might be a simple project, might be a complex project of how you've given ownership, activated, and empowered, as you were saying, bring those teams together, giving them the swim lanes, allowing them to do what they do really well. Listening, getting that feedback will come to, but I think it's, as I say, what do you think's the right way, Ryan, coming to you on this? Get the bias out of the way.
On the spot, I think the hybrid model is perfect for today's world in terms of we're not in a factory. We don't have to clock in, clock out. As creatives, we're working, our brains don't switch off naturally anyway. So allowing the people more time to be in if they're happy with that, and to be in their home environment or wherever they prefer to work, if it's a coffee shop or wherever, then that's fine as long as it works for the project. And I think that's absolutely fine. Sometimes it can be a bit more challenging where the quick conversations we can have in house quickly, the info. Those people are remote. You've always got to catch up, dial in with those, so it can take a bit more time. But I think generally, if the creators are happy and the outcome is still the same and more powerful, and then we're going to get a better result. So I think it works quite well.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with all of it, and I think the hybrid model, it gives us access.
Well, I know what you mean. I'm with you.
Well, it gives us accents as well when people are working in foreign countries.
We do some dubbing later.
It gives us access to talent that we couldn't have had. Before everyone was set up like this.
Yeah.
There was a recent project we were working on, and one of kind of senior creative leaders in the project was living out in Barcelona. We needed some key meetings with clients. London's less than an hour flight, wasn't a problem. I think the key is communication, and I think whether people are sat in a studio or whether you're hybrid or mixture, it's just having the check-ins at the key points, but also understanding each individual team's needs and how, like, there's some designers that
thrive
we
on
work
people,
with,
right?
that you brief one person in particular. I know we brief them and they ask a lot of questions, thorough knowledge, and then you'll get a call the next day where everything's fed back to you because that's how they need to process it and communicate it. And I think whether that's in the studio, if they're there, so that happens naturally over the kitchen. But then when it's hybrid, they just have to actually put a call in the diary just to get that process through.
So you're both
just adapting.
Hybrid. I mean, you put the pressure on me and what I think.
Okay. So,
but I'm
gonna
hybrid. But remember, I choose to come in 5 days a week because we're all different. So the thing is, we're all different beasts, and some people, for me, 5 days in the office in the studio works.
Actually, I think that's a good one to jump on. I'll come back to the point, but I think being visible and being accessible as a leader, which is often very hard, is a really important thing. And I think even if it's consistency of where people know you are, and that they know how to get hold of you and when to get hold of you. And I know with all the projects, all the pushing and pulling we do, that is a challenge. But I think that constant can be really empowering to teams. And I know that for myself, they've certainly used that to some degree. And I know we have hot desking and some of us don't, to give some of the tools within the agency. I know Ryan and myself, you're more of a loafer. You'll go wherever it suits. But Ryan and myself are more anchored.
Yeah.
Been called worse. So deduct that as a
Gypsy, okay.
But I think I remember before sort of the world sort of allowed a bit more of a flexible approach, that the sort of out of office was putting your headphones on. And I know that you're a big user of this, where it's like, no, I'm putting them on. I've got deep work to do. I need to get in my groove. You're like, I'm in my Zorb bubble. Don't kind of come and confront me. And I think we have to respect that there is this kind of ability where, this work doesn't come easily. It's hard fought. There's no silver bullets. We have to do the homework and the research and come to points of view and then be able to communicate that back to the teams to then comment on ideations and stuff. However, I do think there are some people that do lose out. And I think that's when you do have to come together to train. So yes, it's the obvious moments where we're ideating, we're critiquing, we are bringing that kind of convergence of ideas into play and discussing that, having gone our own ways. But I think that some of the people that lose out are more the juniors, so less experienced, just from hours in the office, in the agency, on site. I'm always amazed, and I don't want it to be about but how much you learn from phone calls, how much you oversee from people's kind of screens, how much creatives are very open to share knowledge and to work with you. So you learn those ways, even if it's opening other people's folders, seeing their layers and stuff like that. I remember that immensely helpful to my growth. And I think when you're more isolated, more remote, that becomes a challenge for your progression. So I put that as a slight element. But I think for me, when we come back to the leadership, one of the key things that then becomes our responsibility is to make sure that people understand what they're going off to try and do, to try and challenge, to try and look at, to try and focus on, to try and strategically come up with propositions around. We have to put the time in, because it can be very scattergun approach if we don't own that.
100%.
Yeah.
Going back to your the lesson, I don't personally like the word junior, but the less experienced people being like more remote, it goes back to the talent pool. If we got a smaller pool for people to come in to be dedicated for 3 to 5 days a week in the office, then we've got a smaller pool. So there's that flex as well in bringing those roles in. So it's kind of a
and I think there isn't a perfect solution.
No, there's
and
not.
There's pros and cons, and I think being hybrid does give us that balance, but we've got to be acutely aware of that. It does then cut some people off, and it's making sure that it's still visible. And what you can't replace with hybrid is the water cooler conversations, the conversations that weren't planned, and I've just overheard and saw a conversation from another project, and actually it's really sparked an idea for this, and it's very difficult to replicate that kind of when it's remote.
Let's move that on. We've got a challenge here, and I guess we're trying to give some knowledge and some approach to people who watch this, of how we kind of take those on. Part of me says, if you are training at training camp, you come together, you learn the moves, you hopefully put them in practice when it's crunch time or game day. I think software and the applications and the tools we use, although it's many, a multitude, I think the focus, the templates, getting that, I want a better word than this, but drilled into teams about how we use those tools and the expectations is really important, because as you say, you miss those cooler moments. You've still got the pace you've got to react on. You still need that communication of information. And I think those systems, creative talking systems and processes, dangerous. But I think that is something that I think a lot of agencies, particularly us, have spent a lot of time to go, okay, how do we move quickly when we're hybrid and when we want people to see sort of live time? So thoughts on that? What tools do we use, or whether we name them, not name them? Where do you go?
Some things that could be more complex processes, but I think simple things like the creative team chat that we have. It's all creatives. There's no kind of restrictions on it. It's easy. It's use. I think most agencies
got some restrictions on it, but
but in terms of it's purely there for the it's what's replacing the water
supporting each
cooler.
other.
Oh, I've just discovered this great new plugin, guys.
Yeah.
Or we've just done this really amazing render. Sometimes it's sharing a whole pitch. Sometimes it's detailed information. Or other times it's something really simple. Or I'm nipping out and my desk is free. If it's kind of those things are simple. But then the other things that we're implementing recently is the 2Heads insights talks, where we're kind of trying to bring people in different departments, so that it's kind of like open door sessions where people can like really understand, how do animators actually animate? I don't really understand. And yeah, if you were sitting next to them every day, you'd kind of learn that process, but actually this animator's based here, you're never really in the office at the same time. It's giving those kind of platforms
And I think that's
as well.
really interesting, and unfortunately this is going live, so I can't take the royalties, but I know that Ryan has been particularly influential in setting up insights. And I think I'll let you talk on it, but I think as a creative leader, he's not only looking at the pitches and the clients and the teams, he's also looking at the structures and the communication processes to build a creative agency with all those other departments. And I think, Ryan, over to you, but insights was a fantastic way of energizing and focusing that. So don't know whether you want to just give a quick synopsis of that, or talk on that
the
point.
KFC Colonel doesn't want to give the recipe away.
Fair.
Really, it's more of a culture piece, bringing different departments together, learning different things we'd never know. There's a lot of people from production wouldn't know talk about the animation or the rendering side of it, or even the storytelling, which is a really important sort of side of what we do as well. So it's tying, how do we deliver a better pitch? Yourself, you're good at delivering. You both really are. But it's like, so you be leading those sessions of like helping support people how to deliver something better. And those moments are really sort of insightful for the whole sort of business. There are people that really want to learn about these things, not to be a blanket for the whole company to join in, because I would say even for that one, for learning, pitching better, 40-50% of the agency would not be interested, or maybe a bit more than that actually. So it's kind of doing that sort of learning inside.
And I think that's a nice segue to another one, because we want to amplify some of the things the agency's doing and communicate how we as creative leaders feel is the right tone and footing. I know that potentially Sam and Matt may talk about this point even further, but the AI kind of task force, I don't want to get into AI because I think that's a whole another kind of series of kind of fireside chats. But about engaging the right tools. So we've talked about tools. Which tools are we going to use? How are we going to amplify those tools? And I know you guys as well have been really powerfully engaged in that. And we've got an army of about 10 people in the agency that's over 100 people across the globe, really looking into those kind of applications, what we can do with it, the kind of what's right, what's wrong from our point of view, from our client's point of view. But I think, again, it's those internal communication fabric, learning, insights elements, which actually helps to stimulate creative leadership across the board. So again, give some time to you guys whether you want to riff off that, but how do you feel?
Yeah, and I think it's and again, it's the collaborative nature of our team and studio, and that sharing of the knowledge, and particularly with AI tools that you touched on. Like, there's a new AI tool every 5 minutes that we're like constantly testing, evolving now, and it's allowing the time for them to explore that, and encouraging it, and then encouraging the feedback and the sharings and the learnings. And actually, this worked really brilliantly. Actually, this one's not so good, and it's transforming how we work in every creative agency, and it's speeding up the process, but it's also it's opening time to actually allow for more thinking, because the output part of it is something that's kind of being sped up. So it's I think it's something from our point of view, it's giving the team the space to do it is really important.
Yeah, so look, we wax lyrical about storytelling. We totally believe in it. We're all bought in. I'm speaking for Ryan on this, but I know that it's a yes. I think for me, it's what do we do to get that? So certainly we strategically think, and I think some of the things we do there is we've got to understand our audience. We've got to understand the position they are within the kind of industry, the sector. We've got to do our homework on the relevance of who else is around that. What what the position is of the market and all of that sort of, I call it jazz, which comes through from the strategic kind of element. We start to unpick that really and look at where the differentiators are. And I think we can engage people and bring people on that journey as well. So we start to unpick it before the story even happens. And I think, again, as creative leaders, that definitely falls on our remit, but also to mentor others to kind of have that analytical mind to kind of go, actually, where is this thread? And I know we like using these words, but that we're going to pull on to start to, really start the once in upon a time. And here's the next things that we think is a good anchor point. So I'll probably pause there. Anybody else want to jump in, how we go about kind of defining that story, why we believe it's important, how we get teams to sort of link onto that, and how we then qualify back to that story. Lots I'm throwing there, but I think it can be freestyle.
Yeah, and what I think you've got the overall kind of narrative that we're trying to get across, but I think it's helping teams break it down to kind of the emotional highs and the lows, and bringing it back to the audience about actually what do we want them to feel in this moment. And then when we're starting to open up those questions, we're not focused on, okay, what content are we putting on here, what we're doing. It's broader. It's kind of, is it a moment of suspense? It feeds into what is the music playing? What's the lighting? Like and then if it is actually spoken content, like, what's the tone? What's the voice? And I think as soon as we're starting to look at it from that perspective, it's easier to go back and put all the ingredients together.
You've hit my sweet spot. And one another thing is it's, and I think you were saying it with teams, but it's emotional intelligence. And for me, one of the things that we don't get a badge of honor on is we almost have to be psychologists. We have to really get into the sort of acting shoes of who we're targeting and understand what, as you said, what do we want them to think? We create amazing experiences that create memorable moments, even if it's for different ranges and ages. And I think that's a real kind of passion that we all have and how we do that. And I think for us, we have to get that understanding of, no, actually, I want people to leave here. And I think it's changed certainly from my background, which was architecture, and I wanted to look like this. And I think that was very short-lived for me. It was sort of superficial, very important, but had a superficial purpose. I think where we've certainly moved on, like decades ago, is how do people move through space? What do they feel? What are they going to leave with? What's this moment of, we like wonder because it's the easy one, particularly I know in your world of themed entertainment and beyond. But I think, Ryan, again, we use that emotional intelligence, coming back to some of the things we were talking about before, is how we get teams connected, working together, empowering them, because it's not a you go do this task moment. It's we need you to think like this.
And that comes down to people's personal interests. We, trying to tie the right teams, the right project, the right person is fundamental. All three of us have worked together now for 14 years.
No, we won't do years. We'll just say too long.
14, and we are all three different creatives.
Yeah.
We all think differently. We all have our different areas of expertise. Your side more sort of the line of aviation and tech and stuff like that. Yourself, themed entertainment. Myself, I'm still trying to work that out. I'm not sure, but brand, storytelling, 100%.
Yeah.
So that's where we complement each other. And again, it's the team. So it's the three people, might be the leadership team in this agency, but we're all very different. Which is nice, and I know that I can work with you and bring you in and work with together, and we cross over quite a lot on different things, different aspects. So I think that's a key factor of what we do.
Yeah, and maybe we can't talk about specifics, so I'll try and keep this general, but I know you, Ryan, will know the detail on this, but particularly with a kind of younger age audience, let's say a well-known intellectual property that's going to really stimulate, probably wrong choice of words, but kids are going to come out with that wonder and joy. And it's it's a brand, it's an intellectual property that was well known, and it might be an anniversary for that. It's a real responsibility. But I think when we're talking about how we pick that story, forgive me if I'm wrong, but maybe talk around it. Certainly from what I've seen you do that and how you turn that into an experience, whether that's, a kind of a fun theme park, energetic moment to a very nuanced playing with soundscapes, you really craft again, what you want people to feel and that energy that you
And
want to
the only
create.
way any sort of creative going to do that is going away and immersing themselves in that, whatever that character or topic is. What, if it doesn't have to be a character, it can be a topic. In terms of some of our aviation clients, you need to go step back into that world, take a good look underneath the bonnet and see what it's about, find out the history. One of the things we did for the recent project is watch all the movies or all the documentaries on it, find out all the information, become a master of that before you can then put that on paper and ideas, but then how you can bring that experience to life. That's fundamental of what we do.
And I think you said that we're all sort of different, and maybe we'll come on to the kind of the blinkers and the echo chamber. But one last thought, and I'll maybe hand it to Lisa here, is from my point of view, we don't have calluses. We're the people behind the desks or in front of cameras to some degree. But where I'm going with this is it's about the hard work. I've said no silver bullet. And I think one of the things is creative leadership, which either gets, for what it's worth, respect or people mobilize behind and then can go well in front of you and be empowered, is we have to dig deep into those stories. And I think you said it differently. I know you go for the, I'm going to put you in this, but the kind of children's playground areas, you're in complete different worlds, and I might be, we're pigeonholing here, and I know that's not the case, but in more kind of the corporate kind of worlds and the technology kind of elements, that we really have a passion to
That's
roll our sleeves up and get underneath,
right? And our passions and our personalities. If you can't tie those people together with those, then you're not going to get a good result.
No, well, absolutely not. And I think it's also, it's knowing when you've mentioned about like echo chambers there, and we've got very different skill sets of knowing when actually I need a fresh perspective on this, and I kind of just need to get out of where my thinking normally is and pull someone else in, and or bring someone else and put a different team together that have a slightly different spark.
So I think that's a really good one. We're not going to round that one up. We'll maybe just cut and move into another one. So echo chambers, not got the ideas, very rarely happens. Have another coffee, off we go for a walk in the park. We normally come back with a swinging punch. I think what I'd like to say here is, here's a challenge. We have many clients within, let's just pick one industry, aerospace. We turn up at the same shows. How do we keep it fresh? How do we keep our teams engaged? Let's talk about the challenge there that, look, we know what trend it is. Everybody's starting to mold the same trend. How do we stand out? How do we push ourselves? And as leaders, I think we start to own that territory to question, is this right? Is this wrong? Are we pushing it? So Lisa, how do you stop? And I think we've named this coin saying echo chambers and the blinkers on. What do you do with the teams, or how do you get that?
I think, there's a couple of things. I think one of the things, just as a business, I think we are quite lucky in is the diversity of our clients and our projects.
Yeah.
Is that just even internally, that kind of cross-pollination between industries and things, we don't get sucked into that echo chamber of only working in aerospace and just trying to look at that, and actually seeing what luxury are doing over here and what that's doing over there, and borrowing from different industries. One makes it, I think, is a great breeding ground for us. But it is also, it's breaking that cycle. It's actually, there's this great thing on in London. We need to just go and see it. And what sparks out of that, you think sometimes nothing comes out of it. And then it'll be 6 months down the line, a year down the line, a project comes in, it'd be like, oh, do you remember that thing like that, how they created that emotion and feeling? Yeah, and then it feeds off, and it's very difficult to kind of put any justification of budget. You can't sort of say we spent this money and it was worth it, like quantifiably, until further down the line. It's something you can't really put.
And I think, Ryan, you've been key in some of this and taking ordering with our kind of creative resource manager as well, but sort of voicing it into the teams when we have our weekly kind of stand up, just to see where it is, from the expos in Japan to Dubai, getting people out there, but also, as I say, sort of maybe the less experienced in kind of experiential design. London's on our doorstep, with LA, the cultural differences, to Montreal, really binding that and having those kind of global meetings to kind of stitch up trends. But I think, empowering teams, which I know you're passionate about, Ryan, and making sure less experienced get listened to, have the voice, and that they also, when we don't have the time, can go and show us what it's about and see it through a different kind of set of eyes and different perspectives that might freshen us as well. So I think, where do you want to take that?
I would say that we get our heads lost in the fog all the time, don't we? As seniors in this industry, and you think you know it all and just having the open mind to somebody to come in with a fresh perspective, regardless of their skill, their age, their experience. If they come with a fresh new ideas, that's what helps bring us out of that, So, yeah.
And I think, and then part of that is building the culture where anyone feels they can add that idea.
Yeah.
It's not, top down. We, everything, we set the vision and you fulfill it. I think it is about that collective. We all create the vision. We've got the accountability to kind of make final decisions and take the responsibility when things don't necessarily go the way they need to go.
Which we can get right. 100%.
Which can happen. But
jump in on there and put the pause, because I think, fireside chat, I think this definitely is. I think we've covered a multitude of topics as kind of leadership, but I think let's do final thought, or whatever we want to coin it. After we've done all this, we've let's go the worst case scenario. Normally we win, it's celebratory, we've got some awards in the cupboard there next to us, but we've not won it, or we've got some things that we need to do work on, or things along those lines. So what happens then? What's the takeaways? What are the learnings as a leadership that we do? And I think I'll throw one in and lead it, but I think listening, with all the hot air we've created here, is something that I think actually we're very good at doing. And I think it's very important. So I think I would put listening down, whether that's to clients and teams. But I think, guys, I might have jumped in on the first one, riff off that one, or come up with some ideas. So, it's not gone well. How do we respond as creative leaders? Getting the team back in place. What are the next steps? How do you work with that challenge?
Some people will just automatically be up for the next fight. It's getting the knockbacks over and over again and not taking it over personally. As long as you can learn from that, from the loss, and why. If it is from a creative point of view, first of all, probably 50% of work we don't win is probably not down to the creative. It's for other reasons, relationships, costings, or whatever. So for me, it's how that person bounces back is the most important thing. How do we pick them up? And I always say to some of the less experienced people, are you really proud of that work? Would you put that piece of work in your portfolio? And then I bet you, depending on their experience level, they're going to say, yes, I am. So take that away as a bonus and a win for you, as a personal win. Let's put the gloves back on and let's get ready to go fight again for the next one and take the learnings from that.
I think that's an interesting way of sort of motivating. It's that intrinsic motivating factor, is when do you think good enough is? And I know when you talk about teams, you're often a big empowerer of that. It's not when I say it's done, it's do you think you can push any more? And I know there's parameters, time and this and that and the other that always come in. I think one of the things there that you might add on, you talked about, it's not always the creative that potentially can be the cracking point in the wrong, not voting for us, as it were. I think as creative leaders, we don't stop there. You were talking very early on about kind of working with other departments. It's then trying to work out how creative can work with those departments to iron out those challenges and learnings from next times. If it is just a costing model, if it is just a timing or whatever. And I think we take that on as well. And I think the other element I'd like to sort of riff on there is that I truly believe if leaders, and I think we work as a good unit, and I hope it maintains as a unit, and I'm a firm believer in a hierarchy within creative can sort of kill it. There is a need at certain moments, but for most of the moments it's not needed. And I think making sure people feel safe, secure, without anxious to go where the mind goes, means that we don't have, we've already talked about it, blinkers or challenges. We are free, and that this is the safe space to talk about those ideas, because otherwise we go down the safe and the well-trodden route. So I think that's another point. Now, we've talked, and it might only be a 2-minute kind of fireside chat, but for about half an hour on this.
I've lost 2 kilos.
Yeah, in the hot box. I think what I'd probably just say is, any last thoughts from us, from creative leadership, what it means to us, how we combat, major challenges and what we drive forward in. Anybody want the final thought?
I think it's a balance, isn't it? I think it's giving freedom in one hand so that people can go and do that exploration, like you just said, but then also giving the security of being confident that at the end, someone does need to make a decision. And when that decision needs to be made and a route needs to be picked, it's firm and it's clear and everyone knows where they're pulling. And it's a delicate balance that can tip either way. And I think that's what we're constantly kind of striving to kind of create those grounds for everyone.
Absolutely. Some people need the target to be aimed at.
Yeah.
Other people don't want the target, want the guidance as they're going with. And I think as us, that's what you said. It's not linear. It's not always one size fits all. And I think for me, that's why I say emotional intelligence. It's about the people.
Yeah.
Understanding people. Ryan, any last moment?
Yeah, I think for me, the nice thing about creative leadership, us guys in the room, we've been there and we've won those pitches, we've in those moments going, yes, we've done it. And we still have that. We still love that. And that's what makes us the people we are. But now when you're bringing in new talent and seeing them win, succeed, seeing the clients' comments come back about your people that you brought in, that is really, really sort of special to know that you're doing okay with, and your team are there to fight for you as well. So I think that's my final thought.